Has it ever made sense to you when you've been told you're not hungry, you're thirsty, go drink some water? Every time I've been asked to be quoted or used as an expert on the topic in some type of article, I've always had to say no. Because when I go to the evidence to do the research to support my statements or that belief, I can't find any. So I don't believe them. But I continue to see those types of articles. I decided to reach out to an expert and say, hey, as a dietitian, I need to have the right answers. I want to be saying the right things. And I found one. His name is Dr. Richard Mattis. Dr. Richard Mattis is a PhD at Purdue. He's also a dietitian, and his whole purpose in life, from a professional standpoint, is ingestive behavior research. He's got a great deal of articles and publications that he's done. Be expected for a PhD on the topic. Authored several chapters. He teaches the courses, and I think this is very important. Ingestive behavior seminars, human feeding, a journey through the GI tract, and human sensory systems. He's an expert on what happens when we eat and drink. Thought he was a good resource, and you'll be very interested to hear what he had to say. But first, let's take a look at some of these headlines that I continue to talk about. Hunger versus thirst, tips to tell the difference. The truth is, most people confuse thirst and hunger, mistaking the former for the latter. Clinical studies have shown that 37% of people mistake hunger for thirst because their thirst signals are weak. Now, this comes from the PKD Foundation. It's a credible website, but I went to go look for that particular line right here, this statement, because there are no citations included here to support that. So I Google searched it. When I Google search it, the first thing that shows up is the PKD site, to be expected, but I don't find a whole list of hits. I do happen to find this particular PubMed entry, 37%, signals, weaker, excess intake, plain water. Okay, makes sense. Look at the author, Dr. Richard Mattis. So let's take a look at this article a little more in depth. So if I do a search on this article, find 37%, enter, I get one hit. That one hit reads, this represents a 4% decline of plain water intake from 37% in the 1999 to 2004 data, compared to 2005-2006 data. In there, did that say anything about 37% of people mistake hunger for thirst? It doesn't, because what it's representing is a decline in plain water intake over a period of time. Now, I don't want to throw that particular site under the bus. So let's go to another one. Women's health. A lot of people confuse thirst for hunger, says Peterson, so they tend to eat rather than drink water. Who's Peterson? That would be Carrie Peterson, MD, a physician. Oh, that's tough, because these are both credible resources. Maybe saying something inaccurate. So how do we clear this up? Why doesn't it make any sense? I want to start by jumping into Dr. Mattis' article just a little bit more. Originally, we searched for the 37%. We found that it didn't represent that. Now let me jump over to more of this same article, but I'm not going to go any further than the abstract. I almost always do, but in this case, I don't need to. Because the observations here were that thirst ratings are higher and more stable over the day compared to hunger, and thirst may be more motivating to drink than hunger is to eat. Now you take that observation by Dr. Mattis, a researcher and expert on the topic, and you say, well, wait a minute, if thirst is really stable, more stable than hunger cues throughout the day, how can we be confusing hunger for thirst? Doesn't make a lot of sense. So, what did Dr. Mattis have to say? Dr. Mattis says that the two sensations of thirst and hunger are not physiologically linked, but there are or exists a strong behavioral link, and that 70% of our beverage consumption is done while eating, because drinking facilitates a more enjoyable eating experience because it's easier to swallow. What does that mean? That means 70% of the things that we drink all day are done during meal times when we're eating food. It also says that those individuals choosing to use water intake or drinking water as a weight loss technique, Well, offsetting hunger by drinking non-caloric beverages like water, tea, black coffee, it doesn't work. The stomach learns and adapts. So that stretching signal, or that idea that if we drink water, it stretches, the stretch signals in the stomach tell us we're full. Well, the muscles around the stomach that control its tone, whether it's tight or loose, will adapt and it will no longer work over time. So, chewing gum is just as effective as drinking water for distracting or offsetting hunger. So does other distractionary techniques like taking a walk. Probably be better than drinking lots of water trying to confuse yourself. The gastric cues for hunger are driven by the tone of the stomach. We talked about that just a few minutes ago, that the muscles outside the stomach make the stomach taut or relax so that it's loose. Thirst doesn't function under this same mechanism. Dr. Mattis also points out that we don't need the stomach for hunger. Hunger is such a fundamental part of human life that it's a redundant system, and there are other systems that control that. And we see this in GI surgeries, bariatric surgeries, where part of the stomach is either bypassed or removed. Then what the hell? Where did this all come from? And Andrew, what do you think is the problem? Well, I don't know where it came from, but here's what I think the problem is. I think that we're unable to distinguish between emotional hunger and actual physical hunger. And that's important because that sensation of like, hey, you're hungry, is you're really hungry, but do you know why? Distinguishing between these two starts to make sense as to why we can use that for thirst. So, emotional hunger is instant and it's sudden. Real hunger takes a little bit of time to happen. When you're emotionally hungry, you want a specific food. Your cravings are, I gotta have that. Whereas if you're physically hungry, you are certainly more open to eating just about anything. You're not gonna turn your nose up at that salad or that sandwich because you are actually hungry. I think Eddie Murphy's, oh, that's the best damn Ritz I've ever had, is the best example of the most mundane and boring foods can be very tasty when you're actually physically hungry. Emotional hunger is very urgent. You need it now. I gotta have it. Where the physical hunger is a lot more patient. You need to eat, but you can put it off. Because we do oftentimes all the time. Oh, my stomach is growling. Matter of fact, my stomach is growling now because I've done 500 takes of this video. I'm hungry, but I keep putting it off because I can. But between the hours of 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., I'm eating the whole world and I'm never full. It's insistent. I've got to have it because there's anxiety or discomfort or emotional issues at that particular time of the day that are causing me to be unsatisfied with just eating. I'm trying to distract myself. And here you will find that with the automatic or absent-minded eating that's involved with emotional hunger. And most importantly, number 7, you don't notice that you're full. And if you do, you'll still keep eating when it's emotional hunger. Whereas with physical hunger, you will stop when you're full. Or the hunger cue of your stomach growling will go away, or that headache or the lightheadedness that some people get. Emotional hunger and physical hunger are completely different. So I don't think that you don't know the difference between whether you're hungry or thirsty. I think many of us don't know the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. That's that intuitive eating behavior, which is incredibly important to cultivate over time. It's something I believe we're taught to not do anymore, as our parents tell us when we should eat, how we should eat, how much we should eat. We're incredibly unintuitive about how we eat. So it starts at a young age where we begin to lose that. So how do we reconnect? Well, that's a completely different video on intuitive eating behaviors and understanding emotional hunger and physical hunger. But let's just stop and say right now, there's no research to support the idea that your feelings of hunger are actually thirst. They're not physiologically linked. There is no chain connecting them. And drinking water is not effective at suppressing the appetite. Once we get rid of those misconceptions, we can step back and say, we're hungry because we're hungry. And it's probably emotional hunger that's driving that insatiable desire to eat. that's just not satisfied by anything. That's a completely different topic. Whole nother video to talk about intuitive eating and the traits of emotional hunger and how to discern the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger, and really getting down to the habits of who we are. Something that dietitians do exceptionally well. We're not just food Nazis tossing out food plans. Trying to understand the habits of who you are and why you eat and where that came from. The decades of the eating you, that's part of this. Which explains why we could get this, you're not really hungry, you're really thirsty, to explain something that we didn't in the past. I hope this helped. I do this because it's fun. But as you know, followers are important. So if you could subscribe, find me on Instagram, Endurance Chef on Facebook, Andrew D. Chef RD, Andrew Dole, YouTube, paying box subscribe. All of those things are incredibly helpful. If you have a topic that you think doesn't make any sense around nutrition, let me know. I'd be happy to look at it. Thanks, bye-bye.